The message arrived on a cold December morning in the year 2247. It came from deep space, from a region of the galaxy that human telescopes had been watching for decades. Admiral Lisa Monroe stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station. Reading the translated words on her screen, her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the edge of the console, just a little too tightly. The message was from something called the Vorath Dominion. They claimed to rule over 300 worlds across the galaxy. They had been watching Earth for some time, studying humanity, learning about their technology and their weaknesses. Now they had decided that Earth would become their next conquest. The translation was simple and cruel. Surrender your planet. Give us your resources. Your people will serve the Dominion as workers and slaves. You have 30 cycles to respond. Resistance will result in complete destruction. Commander. Daniel Hayes walked up beside Lisa and read the message over her shoulder. He was a younger man with calm eyes and steady hands. He had served with Lisa for 15 years, through conflicts on Mars and in the asteroid belt. He had never seen anything like this. They really think we'll just give up, Daniel said quietly. Lisa shook her head slowly. They've done this before. Hundreds of times if their message is true. They show up with overwhelming force, make demands, and most species probably surrender without a fight. But not us. No, Lisa agreed. Not us. Within 2 hours, the United Earth Council gathered for an emergency meeting. Leaders from every nation on the planet joined through secure channels. Secretary General Kevin Morrison led the session. He was a man in his 60s with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment we have feared and prepared for since the discovery on Europa, he began. 150 years ago, we found the archives of an ancient civilization buried beneath the ice. Those archives warned us that the galaxy was not a peaceful place. They told us stories of countless species that had been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed by aggressive empires. Morrison paused and looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. We made a decision back then. We would not let that happen to humanity. We would prepare. We would build defenses in secret. We would make sure that if the day ever came when someone threatened our world, we would be ready. The council voted unanimously to reject the Vorath demands. There was no debate, no argument. Every leader understood what was at stake. Surrender meant the end of human freedom forever. Fighting might mean destruction, but at least they would face their fate on their own terms. Lisa was given the task of sending humanity's response. She stood before the communications array, knowing that her words would travel across the stars to beings that had never known defeat. She kept the message short. To the Vorath Dominion, humanity declines your offer. We will not surrender our world or our freedom. We suggest you reconsider your approach to other species. This is your first and only warning. Do not test us. The message traveled at faster than light speeds through the relay network that humanity had built over the past century. It reached the Vorath fleet in less than a day. Overlord Krethver received the transmission aboard his flagship, a massive warship called the Dominion's Wrath. He was a tall being with 4 arms and 4 eyes, his skin covered in thick gray scales. He had commanded Vorath conquest fleets for over 60 years. He had personally overseen the subjugation of 23 worlds. Never once had a species dared to refuse him. He read the human message and laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge of his ship, a harsh and cruel noise that made his officers shift nervously at their stations. These humans are either very brave or very stupid, Krethver said. They have no idea what they face. Our fleet will crush their pathetic defenses and ours. His communications officer, a younger Vorath named Vethril, hesitated before speaking. Overlord, they mentioned giving us a warning. They seem confident. Perhaps we should gather more intelligence before we advance. Krethver turned all 4 of his eyes toward Vethril. The young officer immediately lowered his gaze. The humans are primitives, Krethver said coldly. They have been a spacefaring species for barely 2 centuries. The Dominion has ruled the stars for over 1,000 years. They have nothing that can threaten us. Their warning is empty noise, the desperate words of a species that knows it is about to be conquered. He ordered his communications officer to send a reply. The message was even shorter than the one humanity had sent. Your warning is noted and dismissed. The Dominion does not negotiate with prey. Prepare for conquest. When Lisa received the Vorath response, she felt a weight settle in her chest. She had hoped, against all logic, that the warning would be enough. That the Vorath would sense something in humanity's confidence and decide to leave them alone. But she had known from the beginning that hope was foolish. She contacted Secretary General Morrison and informed him of the Vorath reply. "They're coming," she said. Simply, Morrison was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the burden of what he was about to authorize. "Then we have no choice. Begin preparations for full deployment of Project Prometheus. May God forgive us for what we're about to do." Lisa ended the transmission and turned to look out the observation window of her station. Earth hung below her, beautiful in blue and green. Home to 12 billion human beings who had no idea how close they were to annihilation. Most of them did not know about the Vorath. Most of them did not know about Project Prometheus. They lived their lives in peace, trusting that their leaders would protect them. Lisa intended to honor that. Trust, she began issuing orders to installations across the solar system. Secret bases on the Moon, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn began their activation sequences. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, facilities that had been built over generations hummed to life. Scientists who had dedicated their entire careers to the project they hoped would never be used now prepared for the moment of times. Truth, Commander Daniel Hayes stood beside Lisa as the reports came in. "All stations are responding," he said. "We'll be at full readiness within 48 hours. Lisa nodded slowly. "The Vorath fleet will reach the Mars threshold in 72 hours. We'll be ready." Daniel hesitated before asking the question that had been weighing on his mind. "Admiral, do you really think this will work? The Vorath have conquered hundreds of worlds. They must have faced resistance before. What makes us different?" Lisa turned to face him, and for the first time, Daniel saw something in her eyes that looked almost like pity. Not for humanity, but for the Vorath. "The difference," she said quietly, "is that we found the precursor archives. We know things that the Vorath cannot imagine. We have weapons they have never seen and defenses they cannot understand." She paused and looked back at the stars. "They think they're coming to conquer prey. They have no idea that they're walking into a trap that has been 200 years in the making." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He had served with Admiral Monroe for years, but in that moment, he realized there was much about Earth's defenses that he did not know. Much that had been hidden from everyone except those who needed to know. The Vorath were coming, and they were about to learn that humanity was not prey, deep beneath the Nevada desert. In a facility that appeared on no map and existed in no official record, Dr. Samuel Price watched numbers scroll across his monitor. He was 61 years old, thin and tired, with gray hair that had once been dark brown. He had spent his entire adult life working on a project that most people would never know existed. The facility around him stretched for miles in every direction. It was buried so deep underground that no satellite could detect it, no scanner could find it. Thousands of scientists and engineers worked here, generation after generation, building and improving the technology that would one day save humanity from extinction. Dr. Catherine. Belle walked up beside Samuel and handed him a cup of coffee. She was 48 years old, practical and calm. With the steady hands of a woman who had performed thousands of delicate experiments over her career, she had been Samuel's colleague and friend for over 20 years. "The activation sequence is running smoothly," she reported. "All quantum field generators are coming online. We should have full power within 36 hours. Samuel took the coffee and sipped it slowly. 150 years of work, he said quietly. 3 generations of scientists who dedicated their lives to a weapon they hoped we would never have to use. And now we find out if it was worth it," Catherine finished. She understood what Samuel was feeling. Every scientist in this facility understood. They had built something terrible, something with the power to destroy entire fleets in the blink of an eye. They had done it to protect humanity. But that did not make the weight of it any easier to bear. Samuel set down his coffee and turned to face her. Do you remember when I first decrypted the precursor energy equations? 30 years ago, in a lab not much different from this one. Catherine nodded. I remember. You stayed awake for 3 days straight. When you finally cracked the code, you just sat there staring at the screen. I thought something was wrong. Something was wrong, Samuel said. I had just discovered how to tap into unlimited energy from the quantum vacuum. I had found the key to technologies that could transform human civilization, and all I could think about was how easily that power could be used to destroy. The precursor archives had been discovered on Europa in the year 2097. A team of explorers, drilling through the ice moon's surface, had found a vast underground chamber filled with alien technology. The beings who had built it were long dead, vanished millions of years ago. But they had left behind their knowledge for whoever might find it. The archives contain the history of thousands of species across the galaxy. Most of those species no longer existed. They had been conquered by aggressive empires, enslaved, exterminated, or simply absorbed until nothing remained of their original culture. The precursors had watched this pattern repeat over and over across millions of years. But the archives also contained something else. They contained technology far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Energy systems that could power entire civilizations. Weapons that could reshape the fabric of space itself. Shields that could stop any attack. The precursors had developed all of this and more, and they had left it behind as a gift for species wise enough to use it properly. Earth's leaders had made a decision. They would not share this knowledge with the public. They would not use it for conquest or profit. Instead, they would use it to build defenses that would ensure humanity's survival against any threat. Project Prometheus was born. Over the next 150 years, generation after generation of scientists worked in secret facilities around the world and throughout the solar system. They built quantum field generators that could project energy across vast distances. They developed targeting systems that could identify and destroy specific technological signatures while leaving everything else untouched. They created a defense network so powerful that no fleet, no matter how large, could survive against it, and they kept it all secret. The public knew nothing. Even most of Earth's military knew nothing. Only a small group of leaders and scientists understood what humanity had truly become. Samuel walked through the facility, checking systems and talking to his team. Young scientists looked up from their work as he passed, their faces showing a mixture of fear and determination. They knew what was coming. They knew that the moment they had trained for their entire careers had finally arrived. In the main control room, a massive holographic display showed the solar system. The Vorath fleet was clearly visible, a cluster of red dots moving steadily toward Earth. 300 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built with conventional technology. They have no idea, said Dr. Nathan Cole, a young physicist who had joined the project 5 years ago. He was staring at the display with wide eyes. They think they're coming to conquer a primitive species. They don't know what's waiting for them. Samuel placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. Remember why we built this, Nathan. Not for glory. Not for revenge. We built it because we had no choice. The galaxy is dangerous, and we needed to be able to protect ourselves. I know, Nathan said. But still, when I think about what those generators will do to their ships, to their crews. 300 warships means tens of thousands of crew members, Samuel acknowledged. Tens of thousands of beings who will die in an instant if we activate the system. It's a terrible thing. But consider the alternative. If we do nothing, 12 billion humans will be enslaved or killed. Our entire species will cease to exist as anything but servants of the Vorath Dominion. Nathan nodded slowly. He understood the logic. He accepted the necessity. But understanding and accepting did not make it easier. Catherine joined them at the display. Admiral Monroe is requesting a status update. Samuel straightened and activated the communication channel. Lisa Monroe's face appeared on a secondary screen. She looked tired but focused, a commander preparing for the most important battle in human history.
Dr. Price, what's our status?
All Prometheus installations are activating on schedule, Samuel reported. We'll have full power in 34 hours. The targeting algorithms have been updated with the latest scans of Vorath technology. We can guarantee complete discrimination between their ships and ours, Lisa nodded. Good. The Vorath fleet will reach the Mars threshold in 70 hours. We'll have time to spare, she paused, and something flickered across her face. Doubt, perhaps, or sorrow? Dr. Price, I want you to know that I wish there was another way. I wish we could resolve this without bloodshed. Samuel felt the weight of her words. So do I, Admiral. We sent them a warning. We gave them every chance to turn back. They chose to ignore us. Yes, Lisa agreed. They did. And now they'll learn why that was a mistake. She ended the transmission, and Samuel turned back to the holographic display. The red dots continued their steady advance, unknowing, unconcerned. The Vorath commanders were probably celebrating their easy victory already. They had done this hundreds of times before. They saw no reason why this time would be any different. Samuel thought about the precursor archives and the warnings they contained. Countless species had faced this same choice throughout galactic history. Most of them had been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. The ones who survived were the ones who had been willing to do whatever was necessary to defend themselves. Humanity had made that choice long ago. They had spent 150 years preparing for this moment. They had built weapons that the galaxy had never seen since the precursors themselves had vanished. Now, the time had come to use them. Samuel looked at his team. At the men and women who had given their lives to this project. They were not soldiers. They were scientists, researchers, engineers. They had dedicated themselves to knowledge and discovery. But they understood that sometimes knowledge had to be used to protect the innocent. Everyone, Samuel said quietly, get some rest while you can. When the time comes, we need to be ready. Humanity is counting on us. The team nodded and began to disperse to their quarters. Samuel remained at the display, watching the approaching fleet. In less than 3 days, those dots would cross the threshold. And then the galaxy would learn what humanity had become. A species that had found the wisdom of the ancients. A species that had learned from the mistakes of those who came before. A species that refused to be prey. The Vorath had no idea what was waiting for them. The Vorath fleet moved through the darkness of space, like a swarm of predators closing in on helpless prey. 300 warships, each one bristling with weapons that had burned cities and shattered worlds across the galaxy. Overlord Krethfer stood on the bridge of his flagship. Watching the blue dot of Earth grow larger on his sensors, he felt nothing but contempt for the species he was about to conquer. The humans had only been in space for 2 centuries. They were children compared to the Vorath, who had ruled the stars for over 1,000 years. Their technology was primitive, their military weak, defenses laughable. The only thing that bothered Krethvar was the warning they had sent. No species had ever warned the Vorath before. Most begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. Some fought desperately with whatever weapons they had. But none had ever spoken with such confidence. Such certainty that they could defend themselves. It was probably a bluff, Krethvar told himself. A desperate attempt to make the Dominion hesitate. But the humans would soon learn that the Vorath did not hesitate. They did not retreat. They conquered and they destroyed anyone who stood in their way. Overlord, his sensor officer reported. We are detecting the human fleet moving to defensive positions around the 4th planet. Krethvar studied the display. The human warships were small compared to Vorath vessels, barely worth noticing. There were perhaps 50 of them, along with several dozen orbital defense platforms. Against 300 Vorath warships, they would last perhaps an hour. Their fleet is pathetic, Krethvar said dismissively. We will sweep them aside like dust. His communications officer spoke up nervously. Overlord, we are receiving another transmission from the humans. It is from the same commander as before. Put it through. Admiral Lisa Monroe's face appeared on the main view screen. She looked calm, almost peaceful, which struck Krethvar as strange. Commanders facing certain defeat usually showed fear, anger, or desperation. This human showed none of those things. Vorath Fleet. "This is Admiral Lisa Monroe of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. "You are now 12 hours from the threshold of our primary defense zone. I am transmitting this message to give you one final opportunity to withdraw." Krethvar laughed harshly. "You are persistent human. I will give you that. But your warnings mean nothing. You have nothing that can stop us," Lisa continued, as if she had not heard him. "We did not want this conflict. We asked only to be left in peace. But you chose to threaten our world and our people. You forced us to prepare for war." She paused, and her eyes seemed to look directly into Krethvar's soul. "What I am about to tell you is the truth. I am not bluffing. I am not exaggerating. I am stating a simple fact." "Speak your fact, then," Krethvar sneered. 150 years ago, we found the archives of the precursors on one of our moons. We learned their secrets. We've built their technology. We have weapons that you cannot imagine and cannot defend against. If you cross the Mars threshold, we will activate those weapons, and your entire fleet will be destroyed in seconds. The bridge of the Dominion's wrath fell silent. Even Krethvar felt a chill run through his body at the mention of the precursors. They were legends, ancient beings, who had vanished long before the Vorath rose to power. Some said they had destroyed themselves. Others said they had transcended physical existence. No one knew for certain, but the idea that some primitive species had found their technology and learned to use it was absurd. "It's impossible." "You lie," Krethvar said flatly. "I do not," Lisa replied. "But I understand why you find it hard to believe. You have conquered hundreds of worlds. You have never faced a species with our capabilities. So let me give you proof." She nodded to someone off-screen, and a moment later, Krethvar's sensors detected something strange. A pulse of energy unlike anything the Vorath had ever recorded swept through space at impossible speeds. It passed harmlessly through the fleet, doing no damage. But the readings it left behind made Krethvar's science officers gasp in shock. "That was a demonstration," Lisa said. "A fraction of 1% of our full capability. It was calibrated to pass through your ships without causing harm. But with a simple adjustment, that same pulse could have torn every vessel in your fleet apart at the molecular level." Krethvar stared at the sensor readings his officers were showing him. The energy signature was unlike anything in the Vorath database. The power levels were impossible. Orders of magnitude beyond what Vorath technology could produce. For the first time in his long career, Overlord Krethvar felt something that might have been fear. "This is your final warning," Lisa continued. "Turn your fleet around and leave our solar system. Report to your Dominion that Earth is not worth the cost of conquest. We do not want war with you. We want only to live in peace. But if you force us to defend ourselves, we will do so without hesitation and without mercy." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy with something that sounded almost like sadness. "Please, Overlord, turn back. I do not want to kill your crews. I do not want to destroy your ships. But I will do whatever is necessary to protect my people. The choice is yours." The transmission ended, and Krethvar stood in silence on his bridge. His officers watched him nervously, waiting for orders. The sensor readings glowed on their screens, showing energy signatures that should not exist. War Minister Vethril approached cautiously. "Overlord, perhaps we should contact High Command. Request guidance on how to proceed." Krethvar turned all four of his eyes toward his subordinate. "You suggest we retreat? That we run from these primitives like cowards?" "I suggest we gather more information," Vethril said carefully. "The energy readings are concerning. If the humans truly possess precursor technology—" "Impossible," Krethvar interrupted. "The precursors vanished millions of years ago. Their technology is myth and legend. These humans are trying to frighten us with tricks and illusions. But the readings, Overlord, can be faked," Krethvar said firmly. "Any species can generate false sensor data. The humans know they cannot defeat us in battle, so they are trying to win through deception. I will not fall for their tricks. He straightened and addressed his bridge crew with confidence he did not entirely feel. All ships will continue the advance. We will cross the Mars threshold on schedule. When we arrive at Earth, we will demonstrate what happens to species that dare to threaten the Voroth Dominion. His officers acknowledged the order, though some of them exchanged worried glances. They had seen the sensor readings too. They knew that something was not right. On the orbital station above Earth, Lisa watched the Vorath fleet continue its approach. She had hoped, desperately hoped, that the demonstration would be enough. That Krethver would see the truth and decide that Earth was not worth the risk. But hope was a luxury she could not afford. Commander Daniel Hayes stood beside her, his face grim. "They're not stopping." "No," Lisa agreed quietly. "They're not. Admiral, our conventional forces are no match for their fleet. If we engage with standard weapons, we'll be destroyed in hours." Lisa nodded. She had never intended to fight with conventional weapons. The human warships and defense platforms were there only to maintain appearances, to make the Voroth believe they were facing a normal enemy with normal defenses. The real weapons were hidden throughout the solar system. Waiting for her command? "Contact Secretary General Morrison," Lisa said. "Inform him that the Voroth have rejected our final warning. Request authorization for full deployment of Project Prometheus." Daniel made the call, and within minutes, Morrison's authorization came through. The United Earth Council had voted unanimously. If the Vorath crossed the Mars threshold, humanity would defend itself with everything it had. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the tens of thousands of Vorath crew members who would die when she gave the order. They were not evil beings. Most of them were simply soldiers, following orders, believing in the cause of their dominion. They had families, friends, lives that would end in an instant because their leaders refused to listen to reason, but she could not let that stop her. 12 billion humans depended on her. Her own species, her own people, looked to her for protection. She would not fail them. "All Prometheus stations," she said into the communication channel. "This is Admiral Monroe. Authorization code Alpha 77. Nico. Begin final targeting sequence. Prepare for full activation on my command." Across the solar system, the hidden installations acknowledged her order. Scientists and engineers began the final countdown. Quantum field generators hummed with power beyond imagination. Targeting systems locked onto the approaching Vorath fleet in 12 hours. The fleet would cross the threshold. In 12 hours, the galaxy would change forever. The Voroth fleet crossed the Mars threshold at exactly 1432 hours, Earth Standard Time. 300 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready, their crews eager for the conquest. That would add another world to the Dominion's empire. Overlord Krethver stood on the bridge of the Dominion's wrath. Watching Earth grow larger on his view screen, the blue planet was beautiful, he had to admit. Its oceans sparkled in the light of its yellow sun, and its continents showed the marks of a thriving civilization. Soon, all of it would belong to the Vorath. "All ships report ready for battle," his tactical officer announced. "The human fleet is holding position near the third planet. They do not appear to be moving to intercept." Krethvar found this strange. Any normal species would send everything they had to slow the advance, to buy time for their planet to prepare. But the humans were just waiting, as if they wanted the Voroth to come closer. "Perhaps they have accepted the inevitability of their defeat," Krethvar mused. "Perhaps they hope that by not resisting, we will be merciful." War Minister Vethril shifted uncomfortably. "Or perhaps they are waiting for something, Overlord." "The warning they gave us was a bluff," Krethvar interrupted firmly. "I will hear no more about precursor technology and impossible weapons. We are the Voroth Dominion. We have conquered 300 worlds. These humans are nothing." He gave the order to continue the advance. On Earth's orbital station, Admiral Lisa Monroe watched the Vorath fleet cross the threshold line that had been drawn on her tactical display. Her heart was heavy, but her hands were steady. She had given them every chance. She had warned them repeatedly. They had chosen not to listen. The fleet has crossed the threshold, Commander Daniel Hayes reported quietly. Lisa nodded. Around her, the command center was silent. Every officer knew what was about to happen. Every officer knew that they were about to witness something that would change the course of galactic history. Open a channel to all Prometheus stations, Lisa said. Channel open. Admiral Lisa took a deep breath. In a few seconds, she would give an order that would end tens of thousands of lives. It was necessary. It was justified. But that did not make it easy. All stations. This is Admiral Monroe. Authorization code, Omega 9 Delta. Initiate full activation. Target the Vorath fleet. Fire. Across the solar system, the hidden installations responded to her command. On the Moon and Mars, beneath the oceans of Earth, scattered through the asteroid belt and the moons of the outer planets, quantum field generators that had been building power for days released their energy in a single coordinated burst. The pulse traveled at faster than light speeds. Crossing the vast distances of space in less than an instant, it was invisible to normal sensors, undetectable by conventional technology. The Vorath had no warning, no time to raise shields or take evasive action. The pulse reached the Vorath fleet at 1432 hours and 7 seconds. In that single instant, every Vorath ship simply ceased to exist. The quantum disruption wave was precisely calibrated to interact with the specific energy signatures of Vorath technology. It passed through space itself without effect, ignored the scattered row, CKs and debris that floated between the planets, and left every human vessel and installation completely untouched. But when it encountered Vorath technology, it tore it apart at the molecular level. On the bridge of the Dominion's wrath, Overlord Krethver had exactly enough time to see his tactical display turn red before his ship disintegrated around him. One moment he was standing at his command post, confident in his coming victory. The next moment, there was nothing. 300 warships. Tens of thousands of crew members, the pride of the Vorath conquest force, all of it vanished in 7 seconds. Where the mighty fleet had been, there was now only expanding clouds of debris. Metal and organic matter scattered across millions of kilometers of space. On the orbital station, Lisa watched the sensor display in silence. The red dots that had represented the Vorath fleet were gone, replaced by nothing but empty space. It was over. The invasion had been stopped before it truly began. Commander Daniel Hayes stared at the display with wide eyes. Admiral, all of them. They're all gone. Lisa nodded slowly. She had known what the Prometheus system could do. She had seen the theoretical calculations and the small-scale tests, but witnessing it in action was something else entirely. An entire fleet erased from existence in the time it took to draw a breath. Record everything, she ordered. Full sensor logs? Complete documentation? We're going to need it. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Samuel Price watched the same data on his own displays. The quantum field generators were already powering down, their terrible work completed. Around him, his team sat in stunned silence. Dr. Catherine Bell was the first to speak. It worked, she said softly. Exactly as we calculated. Complete destruction of target signatures with zero collateral effect. Samuel nodded but found no joy in the success. Tens of thousands of lives, Catherine. Gone in an instant. We did what we had to do, but it doesn't feel like victory, Catherine finished. No, it feels like tragedy. A tragedy that could have been avoided if they had simply listened. Dr. Nathan Cole, the young physicist, approached them hesitantly. Dr. Price, the energy readings from the discharge are incredible. We've confirmed practical application of precursor zero-point extraction at a scale never before achieved. This data will advance human science by centuries. Samuel looked at the young man and saw the excitement in his eyes. Nathan was thinking like a scientist, focused on the discovery, on the implications for human knowledge. He was too young to fully understand the weight of what they had done. Nathan, Samuel said gently, remember that this technology exists for one purpose only, defense. We do not use it to conquer or destroy. We use it only when there is no other choice. Today there was no other choice. but I hope that in your lifetime you never have to use it again." Nathan's excitement faded as the reality of the situation settled over him. He nodded slowly and returned to his station. On the orbital station, Admiral Lisa Monroe composed a message to be transmitted to the nearest Vorath relay station. She included the full sensor logs of the battle, if it could even be called a battle, along with a message from the United Earth Council. To the Vorath Dominion, your invasion fleet has been destroyed. All 300 vessels were eliminated in 7 seconds by defensive systems you cannot comprehend. We take no pleasure in this outcome. We warned your commanders repeatedly to withdraw. They chose to ignore our warnings. They paid the price for that choice. Lisa paused, considering her next words carefully. We have no desire for war with the Dominion. We have no interest in conquest or revenge. We want only to live in peace, to explore the stars, and to build a future for our species. But we will defend ourselves against any threat, no matter how powerful. She took a deep breath. Do not send another fleet to our solar system. Do not threaten our world again. We have shown you a fraction of our capabilities. If you force us to use them again, we will not hold back. The choice is yours. Choose peace, and we can be friends and partners. Choose war, and you will share the fate of your invasion fleet. The message ended with 2 simple words. We warned you. Lisa authorized the transmission and watched it travel into the depths of space, carrying word of humanity's victory to beings who had never known defeat. She did not know how the Vorath Dominion would respond. Perhaps they would try again with a larger fleet. Perhaps they would negotiate. Perhaps they would simply avoid human space forever. Whatever happened, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Commander. Daniel Hayes stood beside her as the last of the debris from the Vorath fleet scattered into the void. What happens now, Admiral? Lisa considered the question. Now we wait. We watch. We hope that the Vorath are wise enough to accept what happened here today and move on. And we stay ready in case they're not. She turned to look at Earth, hanging beautiful and blue below the station. 12 billion people are safe tonight because of what we did. That has to mean something. That has to matter. Daniel nodded. It matters, Admiral. It matters more than anything. Lisa allowed herself a small, tired smile. The battle was over. The war, she hoped, would never truly begin. And somewhere out there, among the countless stars of the galaxy, other species were about to learn that humanity was not prey. Humanity was something far more dangerous. A species that had learned the secrets of the ancients, that had prepared for centuries in secret, that could destroy any enemy foolish enough to threaten their world. A species that preferred peace, but was ready for war. The Vorath had learned that lesson the hard way. Lisa hoped that others would learn it from their example. Without having to pay the same terrible price, the transmission reached the Vorath Dominion's central command on their homeworld 3 days after the destruction of the invasion fleet. High Counselor Vrexton, the supreme ruler of the Dominion, watched the sensor recordings in his private chamber, his 4 eyes fixed on the display with growing horror. 300 warships, gone in 7 seconds. He watched the recording again and again, searching for some explanation, some trick or illusion that would make sense of what he was seeing. But there was no trick. The human weapons had been real. The destruction had been total. And the message that accompanied the recording was clear. The humans had found precursor technology. They had learned to use it. And they had shown that they would not hesitate to defend themselves. Vrexton called an emergency meeting of the High Council. The leaders of the Vorath Dominion gathered in the Great Chamber where decisions of war and peace had been made for over 1,000 years. They watched the same recordings that Vrexon had watched. They read the same message. War Minister Kretzel, brother of the fallen overlord Krethfer, was the first to speak. His voice shook with rage and grief. We must destroy them. We must gather every fleet in the Dominion, every weapon we possess, and wipe these humans from existence. They have killed tens of thousands of our warriors. They have humiliated our empire. We cannot let this stand. Science Minister Lethavara shook her head. Did you not see the recordings? Did you not understand what you were watching? Our entire fleet was destroyed in 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Even if we sent every ship in the Dominion, the result would be the same. The humans have technology we cannot match, cannot understand, cannot defend against. Then we develop countermeasures, Krethsal argued. We study their weapons and find weaknesses. How? Lethavara demanded. We have no samples of their technology. We have no understanding of the physics involved. The energy readings from their weapon are beyond anything in our science. We could spend centuries trying to understand it and make no progress. The council fell into angry debate. Some agreed with Krethsal that revenge was necessary for the honor of the Dominion. Others sided with Lethavara that further conflict would only lead to more destruction. The arguments grew heated, voices rising, accusations flying. High Counselor Vrexthon raised his hand, and silence fell. The question before us is not one of honor or revenge, he said slowly. The question is simple. Can we defeat the humans? If the answer is yes, then we should consider military action. If the answer is no, then we must find another path. He looked around the chamber at the faces of his council members. Science Minister Lethavara, can we defeat the humans? Lethavara hesitated before answering. Counselor, I do not believe so. Their technology is based on precursor science. The precursors were the most advanced civilization in galactic history. If the humans have truly mastered even a fraction of their capabilities, then no force in the known galaxy can challenge them. Vrexthon nodded. Then war is not an option. We must consider alternatives. Krethsal slammed his fist on the table. Alternatives. You suggest we simply accept this defeat? That we ignore the deaths of our warriors? I suggest we accept reality, Vrexthon replied calmly. The Dominion has survived for 1,000 years because we have known when to fight and when to adapt. This is a time to adapt. He stood and walked to the window of the chamber, looking out at the sprawling city below. Millions of Vorath citizens going about their lives, unaware of the crisis being decided above them. Send a diplomatic vessel to the human system, Vrexthon ordered. No weapons, no threats. A simple request to negotiate. Let us see if these humans are as reasonable as they claim to be. The council reluctantly agreed. Within days, a Vorath diplomatic ship was prepared and sent toward Earth, broadcasting messages of peace on all frequencies. 6 months later, the first formal meeting between humanity and the Vorath Dominion took place on a neutral station. It's constructed specifically for the occasion. Admiral Lisa Monroe, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the galactic community, represented humanity. Ambassador Threxaville, a senior Vorath diplomat, represented the Dominion. They sat across from each other in a conference room designed to be comfortable for both species. Lisa studied the Vorath ambassador with curiosity. He was different from the warriors she had seen in the recordings of the invasion fleet. Older, calmer, with eyes that seemed weary rather than aggressive. Ambassador Monroe Threxaville began. I must ask you a question that has troubled my people since the destruction of our fleet. You possess weapons of unimaginable power. You could have used them to destroy our homeworld, to eliminate the Dominion entirely. Why did you not? Lisa considered her answer carefully, because that is not who we are. We built our defenses to protect ourselves, not to conquer others. When we found the precursor archives, we could have used their technology to become an empire like yours, to dominate the galaxy through force, but we chose not to. Why? Because we looked at our own history, Lisa explained. For thousands of years, humanity made war against itself. Nation against nation, people against people. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. When we finally achieved unity, we swore that we would not carry that cycle of violence into the stars. Threxaville leaned forward, genuinely curious. But you did use violence against our fleet. It's only after we gave your commanders every opportunity to withdraw. Only after they rejected our warnings and insisted on attacking our world. We do not seek conflict, Ambassador. But we will not allow ourselves to be conquered or enslaved. There is a difference between aggression and defense. A fine distinction, perhaps Lisa admitted. But an important one. We could have responded to your initial threat by destroying your fleet immediately. Instead, we warned you. We demonstrated our capabilities. We gave you every chance to change course. Your commanders made their choice. Threxavel was silent for a long moment. The Dominion has conquered hundreds of worlds over our history. We have always believed that strength gives us the right to rule, that weaker species exist to serve the strong. Your people have challenged that belief. You've shown that there are different kinds of strength, Lisa said. The strength to destroy is not the same as the strength to build. The strength to conquer is not the same as the strength to lead. Humanity is strong enough to defend itself against any threat, but we choose to use that strength to seek peace rather than war. The precursors, Threxavel said quietly. The legends say they were wise beyond measure, that they tried to teach other species a better way. But most did not listen. Lisa nodded. We listened. We read their archives and learned from their teachings. They watched countless civilizations destroy themselves through endless cycles of conquest and revenge. They tried to break that cycle by leaving their knowledge for others to find. We were fortunate enough to find it and wise enough to understand it. And now, we hope that others will learn from our example. That species across the galaxy will see that there is another way. That cooperation is better than conquest. That trade is better than tribute. That friendship is better than fear. Threxavel studied the human woman across from him. She seemed sincere, and the logic of her words was hard to deny. The Dominion had always operated on the assumption that only the strong survived, but the humans had proven that strength could take many forms. What do you propose? He asked finally. A treaty, Lisa said. Peace between humanity and the Vorith Dominion. Open communication, cultural exchange, perhaps eventually trade. We do not ask you to abandon your ways overnight. We only ask that you give peace a chance. The negotiations continued for weeks. There were arguments and disagreements, moments when it seemed like the talks would collapse. But in the end, an agreement was reached. The Vorith Dominion would recognize Earth as a sovereign power and renounce all claims to human territory. In exchange, humanity would share certain non-military technologies that could benefit Vorith citizens. More importantly, both sides agreed to establish permanent diplomatic relations. For the first time in Vorith history, they would treat another species as equals rather than subjects. The news spread across the galaxy. Other species, long oppressed by aggressive empires, heard the story of Earth and took hope. A small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system had stood against one of the most powerful forces in the known universe, and won, not through conquest, but through the courage to seek peace from a position of strength. In the years that followed, humanity became known throughout the galaxy as something unique, a species that possessed the power to destroy any enemy but chose to build bridges instead of battlefields, a species that remembered the lessons of its own violent history and refused to repeat them on a galactic scale. Secretary General Kevin Morrison addressed the people of Earth on the first anniversary of the Battle of the Mars Threshold. He spoke of sacrifice and courage, of the scientists who had worked in secret for generations, of the leaders who had made impossible decisions, but most of all, he spoke of hope. Today we remember those who died in the brief battle with the Vorith fleet. We acknowledge the weight of what we did and the responsibility that comes with our power. But we also celebrate what we have achieved. Peace with a former enemy. New friendships across the stars. A galaxy that is slowly learning that there is a better way. He paused and looked into the cameras that broadcast his words to billions. Humanity's journey into the galaxy has just begun. There will be challenges ahead, tests of our principles and our resolve. But I believe that we will face those challenges as we face the Vorith, with strength tempered by wisdom, with power guided by mercy. We will be a light in the darkness of space, showing other species that the cycle of conquest and destruction can be broken. Far across the galaxy, on worlds that humanity had never visited, beings of countless species watched the broadcast that had been relayed through interstellar networks. They saw the humans standing proud and peaceful, offering friendship to any who would accept it, and they began to hope that maybe, just maybe, The galaxy could become a better place. Admiral Lisa Monroe watched the broadcast from her office on the diplomatic station. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from naval officer to fleet commander to ambassador. She thought about the Vorath fleet that had died under her orders and the peace that had been built from that terrible moment. Was it worth it? Daniel Hayes asked, standing beside her as he had for so many years. Lisa considered the question. "Ask me in 100 years," she said finally. "If the peace holds, if humanity continues to choose wisdom over warfare, then yes, it will have been worth it." She turned to look out the window at the stars. The precursors left their knowledge for species like us. Species willing to learn from the past and build a better future. We found their gift and we used it to survive. Now it's our turn to pass that gift along. To show the galaxy that power doesn't have to corrupt, that strength can serve peace. Daniel nodded. Humanity, the teachers. Humanity, the survivors, Lisa corrected. Humanity, the ones who refuse to be prey. And maybe, if we're very lucky, humanity, the ones who help the galaxy grow up. She smiled and turned back to her work. There was still much to do. Treaties to negotiate, relationships to build, a galaxy to explore. The work of peace was never finished, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. The end.